what has been my bike of the year. You know, there's been some surprises, and I think when you get a chance to ride a bike, you don't want to be disappointed in it. Right, good morning campers. I'll put my visor down so you can hear me. It's that time of the year when we give out awards for the best bike of the year. There is no award. I won't be knocking on a big manufacturer's door. Anyway, so we're out on the hunter today, and I'm out on the hunter because Karen's not been out in a while and it just needed a bit of a run. And because we've got a sunny day, I thought it's a good opportunity, and it was the nearest one out of the garage. As always. But actually, with the what the award will be today, this might be quite relevant, this bike. Anyway, enough of that. So what we're doing, yes, we're going to talk about some of the bikes I've been out on this year, and which were disappointing, which were exciting, which I'd buy, and all the rest of it. So I've had a reasonable spread of bikes. Nothing majorly powerful, but I've had some reasonably big adventure bikes out this year, particularly in the Chinese line, so that'd be interesting when you hear my feedback on those. And some of the retro classics and those sort of style of bikes. So, and obviously I've had a lot of my own bikes because I've pretty much almost entirely changed the stable this year, as I like to do. So, as a treat, we're going to go to the Roundtree because I've not been there for ages because it is sunny, it's not dry, the roads are ever so greasy, and we shall have a look and have a chat. Well, it's nice when she pulled it in front, didn't bother looking, never mind, lady should I say. But anyway, we'll go to the Roundtree and we'll do the end of the year bike roundup from there. Right, I shall see you there. Let's drop a cog as we get into the Nationals and go for it. Right, I shall see you at the Roundtree. See you in a sec. Right, here we are then, back to the Roundtree. Beautiful day. You know, I forget every time I ride this bike, the little hunter, how good it is and how good it feels. I know I always fit the signature seat, but boy, it's such a great little bike. And it's, you know, it's still relevant now, even though it's been out for quite some time. It just works. It's just one of those bikes that works. Right, I'm here, I'm on my own. Well, apart from the person in that, it's always a Skoda, isn't it? It was always in Skodas. But I got the treat to myself. Do you think they'll put a plaque up here for me one day? They won't, will they? They're never going to put a plaque up for me, are they? You never know. Right, on with the chat. Right, so here we are, back at the Sussex tree. I've got sun right in my face today. It's funny, you don't realise where the sun's going to be. I think the last time I was here, when there were still leaves on the trees, wasn't there? So it's been a little while, but luckily it's a nice sunny day. It's about the only sunny day we're going to get for a while. Anyway, enough about that. So back to the point in hand, and what was my bike of the year for this year? Well, let's go back and look at some of the stuff that I did try out, and I think we'll start with I'll put them into groups of because there was quite a few of the same make, and I suppose the most common bike make that I used this year was Enfield, because obviously I've got bikes like my own or like Karen's now, the fabulous little Hunter, which is such a great bike. It's such a great bike. But the new bikes I took out this year, so I had the classic 650, and that was released with a big fanfare, wasn't it? And you know how we thought that was going to do fantastic things. But I think it's fair to say that my reception of that was fairly lukewarm, and it wasn't from the riding experience. It was really from the looks. I just don't think the looks worked for me. For the classic 650, I think the new Bullet is a slightly better looking bike, actually, interesting. But both of those I'm not getting overly excited about. So although the Classic 650 was a good bike to ride, I'm expecting my camera to go flying over in a minute because it's quite windy. It just missed the mark for me, and I think they oversprayed it. That'd be my thing on it. So what else? Well, the Bear. Now the Bear was a fantastic bike to ride, and I really like that. And I think from a commercial point of view, what a success that's been for Enfield. And I think the tweaks I made on that bike compared to what the bike it was based on, which was the Interceptor, I think was superb. It rode really well. I don't think it'd be a bike that I would buy necessarily. I think the riding position that for me was just a little bit too much of one thing, and by that I mean that it really is a scrambler. And I think, although here says the man who's building his own sort of retro scrambler, but that's going to be to my taste and my comfort. I think the comfort of the Bear was probably going to knock it for me. But I think as a styling exercise and a sales exercise, wow, wasn't that absolutely superb? Yeah, the Enfield Bear. I think that was the pick of the bunch from Enfield looks wise. I think it was absolutely superb. Another bike I rode when I got back to France this year, didn't I, after I came back from Morocco, and that was the Shotgun. Now the Shotgun surprised me. Excuse me, the Shotgun surprised me. I thought that bike I thought was a really good bike to ride. The looks are, it's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? But I think it looked really good, but I thought it rode fantastic. From that respect, and it's quite surprising that the Shotgun is their worst selling bike, which just surprised me really, because I think it's actually a really, really good bike and a very underrated bike. So yes, the Shotgun certainly could have been in the running for my best bike. I suppose the thing is that I've ridden so many of the 650 variants, and having owned some myself, that I didn't see anything new there. Enfield have brought out some great bikes this year, but there was nothing. They was based on old platforms a little bit, but I think in terms, if I had to say the bike that surprised me most out of the Enfields that I've tried this year, is one that I own, and that was the Meteor. I think that proved itself to be just a fantastic companion. And I know it's been out for a long time, but it's the first time I'd ridden one was when I bought it. And I was really surprised how much I liked that bike and how different it felt to all the other bikes, all the other J series and everything else. It's got such a little quirk of its own, that bike. And you saw the stuff I was doing with it in France, loading it up with logs and ovens and all sorts of things. It was just a phenomenal bike. Great comfort and just great fun to ride. So, yes, the Meteor out of those bikes was the nicest surprise to me, I think, out of all the Enfields I'd ridden this year. And that's a bike that's been out for a long time. It wasn't one of the new releases this year. So, all power to people who've got Meteors because they know what they're like. I also got to ride the Gorilla again, and that bike made me realise how good that is again. That's another one of those sort of like slight sleeper bikes, isn't it? A bit like the Meteor, that you don't realise how good they are. You've got to own one to know how good it is. And the Gorilla was great and a very easy bike to ride. It's not particularly my taste in style, I would say, but as a bike, I think it's fantastic. And again, using that new platform with the Sherpa engine, which I think is great. That's such a good engine. That very underrated compared to all the raft of new sort of 400s and 450s that have come out. And I think it's a superb bike. The other bike that did surprise me, but I didn't get to ride, but in looks alone though, and I think as a styling exercise was extraordinarily good, was the Goen, the 350 Goen. And I think that's a bike you've got to see in the flesh to really appreciate it. When I first saw that, pictures of that, I thought, oh, holy moly, that's a Pee Wee Herman bike, isn't it? But when I saw it in the flesh, I was absolutely blown away. And the difference in the styling they've done on that bike, I think, was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I think that's been very popular in the UK, strangely. I was surprised, but it's actually been very popular as a bike. So, the Goen, But I think I would give, if I was just doing awards for Enfield bikes, I'd probably give it to the little Meteor as my best Enfield of the year, certainly. So what about some of the big manufacturers then? Not that Enfield are not big manufacturers. Honda. So I rode 3 Hondas this year. One which was my home bike, my CB500. I'll talk about that in a sec. But the big announcement wasn't there for at the beginning of this year was the CB350 or GB350, sorry, and that was a great bike. Now I must get that out on that again. But I think as a riding experience and the actual overall feel of the bike, very similar to the Hunter and other bikes in that ilk. It just had a great look, great quality. The only thing that I would say that let me down or lets that bike down a little bit is sort of like the service intervals and stuff like that. I know Honda have addressed that in terms of their sort of care package, if you like. Is that right? Or is that what old people have? I don't know. But like a service package you get for those, and I think that's been very favourable, and I think it's addressed that sort of service intervals and that sort of stuff. But I think it's been a very popular bike, isn't it? Very popular on YouTube. But I think it's a really good bike. But the only thing that sort of drops it for me really is that thing with the service intervals and that. And I think that hits some of those bikes that people don't realise. You can buy a bike which is relatively cheap. There's always a price to pay, isn't there? And they get you on the back end a little bit with the servicing. But great bike, great ride. But I will try and get out on that again next year, because I remember the day that I rode it, it was lashing down. It was an awful day, but I didn't have much choice, and I just went for it. So the GB350, yeah, excellent bike, but it won't take my top slot. The ever youthful NC750X. I took the new version out, the 2025 version. What a great bike! I mean that to me now really encompasses the all-round great bike. And I know it was I think it was pretty much my top bike last year. But in the new sort of styling and the colours and in the manual box, I wasn't really interested in the DCT. I've had the DCT and the NC on one of my own bikes, and it was fine. But I think the manual box works better with that engine. I think you get the best out of the engine in the manual box. But what a great all-rounder. If I could have one bike that I had to go and touring on and all the rest of it, it probably would be that. And that would be the sensible choice. Well, I don't make sensible choices, so it probably wouldn't be. But I thought the NC was a great bike and still offers superb value for money. I really do. I think it's a phenomenal piece of kit. And the other bike that I rode extensively was my CB500X, my Africa 500, which still gives sterling service to somebody else. What a great, almost underrated bike that is. I think in its last incarnation, before the NX 500 came out, you had twin discs on the front, all the goodies. When you get the last incarnation of a bike, after it's had a long run, if you like, you tend to get the best of everything in there because they've upgraded and upgraded and upgraded. And I just thought that was a fantastic touring companion for what I did. Even the long run down to the bottom of Spain, all the rest of it from here, it just proved itself, right the way through. That bike never missed a beat, never refused to start. It just, I know I keep using this phrase, it just bloody worked. And for what I bought that bike for, and then did all the work on it to get it to the spec that I wanted, was about 3,100 or something, wasn't it? What a phenomenal bike, and it looked awesome, and it sounded great with its Scorpion exhaust. Yeah, the CB5, I know it's been out a long time. I don't even know if they still make that now, do they? Has it been completely superseded by the NX? But I think I would always look at a bike like that again if I was going to do a similar thing, and I'm going to look at another project adventure bike for the future. I don't like not having an adventure bike in the stable, strangely, but we'll work out what that's going to be. So, out of the Hondas, I think only because I lived with it for so long, the CB500X was my top Honda. But I think the GB takes a lot of beatings, and the NC at the end of the day. But then Honda make fantastic bikes, so you know, there you are. What do you expect? Now we come to a controversial bit, then the Chinese bikes that I rode. So I rode well, they're all pretty much adventure bikes, aren't they, really? So the first bikes that I rode were in France. In fact, all of them, apart from the Zontes, were in France. So the first two, which are now big in the UK in terms of, you know, there's a big campaign to get these bikes, you know, sold in the UK now. Well, they're here, but they're really pushing them, are the QJ Motors bikes. Now, this isn't going to be about what you think of Chinese, you know, Communist Party, all that sort of stuff. It's just about a motorbike and what you think about the bike. So in the first instance, I rode the SRT 600 and the 700. You remember I rode them back to back? And literally, I went out with one of the guys from the Kawasaki dealership. Was it Perigo 24? I think they're called. And the SRT 600, which is actually a 500, was a phenomenal piece of kit. I wasn't set on the looks of it. I think the looks were a little bit, but the engine, wow. And the way that it rode, goodness me, was that an epic engine. And I compared it directly to the CB500 I was there on that day. My Honda couldn't have got anywhere near that. Now, I know my Honda had done over 30,000 odd miles, but, you know, it was still in tip-top condition. But boy, was that a great engine, you know, really good. And the way it held its weight and all the rest of it, you know, when it was the stationary and that sort of thing, which is quite important, was phenomenal. When I got onto the 700, straight off that on 700, they were like chalk and cheese. The 700 was just like a big slab of concrete. It was just like, oof. You know, there was nothing wrong with the engine, but it was just so heavy. It didn't ride right. It just didn't cope with the weight of its frame and the engine and everything on it. It was just a bit grim, really. So the 600, I think, was the pick of the bunch there. The other bike which I really wanted to ride, and I did fairly recently, was the Reju 500 Adventure. Now that again was, I think, a fantastic bike. I don't think the engine was quite as smooth and refined as the QJ Motors one, but both those engines are pretty much based on the CB500. It's like a copy, clone. But it was a good engine in that Reju, but its crowning glory was its twin tanks. You know, it takes 40 litres. But the actual presence and feel of that bike was, you know, bloody fantastic. And that's a bike I could live with. You know, I really could. And I think that is going to be more readily available in the UK going forward. So it's dear. It's certainly a lot dearer than the standard sort of Chinese fare. It's a Spanish company, but it's a Chinese bike. But yeah, what it won on particular was the looks. You know, if it had the QJ motor, but the looks of the Reju, what a combination that is. But I had it in the red and the gold wheels and, you know, the tubeless type. Bloody fantastic. It was such a pretty bike, so pretty. And, you know, I'm a sucker for a good-looking bike. It doesn't always have to ride by, really. It's got to look the part, innit? And there was no real downside to that bike, I don't think. You know, it's just maybe just the engine was a little bit highly strung. It's hard to, you know, something you just think, I want a bike that's was a bit more relaxed. It's got slightly longer legs on it when you're doing a tour. But yeah, hey ho. And then the other bike that I took out was the Zontes 702. Is it 702, 703? The triple, maybe 703 triple. The new triple. Now that was an interesting bike. It rode great, great handling, had all the kit on it for a phenomenal price. The only downside I would say to that bike was that it ran hot. I don't like a bike that runs hot. I always think I'm always worried that the thing's going to blow. No, I'm sure it won't, and there's never been any reports of the bikes blowing up, but I just felt it ran too hot for me. I like the temperature on a bike to be controlled. If I compared it, say, to the Reju, that ran really cool, amazingly cool. It had a full proper temperature gauge on it with the actual numbers of the temperature on it, and that ran really cool. And that was another big plus point for the redo. But the Zontes, as a riding experience, was superb. A great engine, you know, had loads to go, really good. What else did I ride which were sort of slightly left field? So let's go back to my bikes then. So I had my first foray into Harley Davidson, didn't I? My 1200 XR 1200. What a piece of kit that is. You know, when you get on that, that's a real event, and it's got such an interesting riding position. It's slightly sort of naked sports bike a little bit. It's the feet are quite, your legs are quite swept back, but the engine, wow! When you start that, and it's just boom, 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 boom. It's got a sport trap exhaust on it. What a phenomenal bike! Is there a downside to that bike? Yes, the fuel tank is a thimble. It's just terrible. The fuel tank's terrible, but as a look and a feel and a ride and a presence on the road, wow, it's just awesome bike. So I've loved having that, and I look to do some decent riding with that next year. I know I've got a lot of sort of projects really on the go now with the Kawasaki, but I want to use that Harley a lot more next year. So hopefully we'll get some decent weather. And that brings me on to the Kawasaki. So I've got the W650. You know, I still need to make sure, I need to get it tuned and running really sweet. But it's a lovely ride, and I've enjoyed riding that with the kickstart and all the rest of it, even though I don't need to use the kickstart. But it's a lovely bike to ride. I'm still debating whether to change the colour, and I might yet do it white or cream, I'm not sure. I'm not too worried about, you know, I don't want it to be pristine. It's got to be a bit of a rough and ready sort of bike because the cases are all sort of corroded and stuff. But yeah, that's a bike I can play with and not worry about what I do to it really. But that's a really nice ride, but I may yet go with the wider bars on that. So that's been a nice bike to ride. The Stonello, beautiful bike to look at, gets an awful lot of attention, the Guzzi V7 Stonello. But it's quite a shocking ride. Pardon the pun. It's when you're on a nice smooth road and all that, it's lovely, and it's actually, and the engine is great, and it's so much character, that bike. And when I don't ride it for a while and I get on it, I think, oh Jesus, this is such a good bike. Now I've sorted the clutch and, you know, adjusted the suspension as best I could and changed the tyre. So the Stonello's been a really nice bike, a really nice bike. But I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that next year yet, so I'm going to wait and see what I do with that. Because there's another bike I'd like to buy, but we'll talk about that in another episode. So I suppose we will come back to what has been my bike of the year. You know, there's been some surprises, and I think when you get a chance to ride a bike, you don't want to be disappointed in it. And it's really great when you get on the bike and you think, geez, this is even better than I thought it would be. This is better than I wanted it to be. And the prize for that is the BSA Bantam. I looked at the bike before I got a chance to ride it, and when they said I could go and ride it, I thought great, and it was quite a way off for me. It's about 60 miles out to get to that garage. But when I sat on that bike, I had a very similar feeling to when I sat on the Gold Star the first time. But the difference between that and the Gold Star was when I actually then got to ride the Gold Star, I was disappointed in it. Not in the engine or anything like that, but just in the way that it felt. It sort of felt cheap. It's the only way I could sort of explain it, really. Although I did ride subsequent Gold Stars. You know, I rode Alex's 2 Gold Stars when he did the suspension updates. And I really enjoyed riding. They were actually very good. But the Bantam didn't disappoint. When I finally got to ride it, I really enjoyed it. Oh, it was, you know, it really encompassed what I wanted out of a bike. Simplicity, great looks, a nice turn of speed, and just a great feeling. And it just looks great. And I think the colour choices are great. And you can't ignore the price, can you? I think it has gone up, hasn't it? I think it's jumped to about 3.7 now, which is fine. It's still a bargain. But that was the one bike that I was, on the way back to hand the bike back, I was working out how can I buy it? How can I get this bike? And I thought, oh, I've got too many things coming up and it's just not going to work. But that is a bike that I'm still very keen to get hold of. And I'll probably try and have another ride of one of those just to make sure that they are consistent in their quality, if you like. You know, I think there's a few issues with the quality in some of it. I think the tanks are hard to paint. I think the way that they're painted, I think around the petrol cap and all that sort of things, you know, they're not perfect. But I think, you know, as a bike, for what it gives you, you know, it's like this. I think it's a bike that every time you go on it, it'll put a smile on your face and you'll enjoy it. So yeah, that Bantam, I hope it's a success for BSA. You know, and they've got other bikes coming out with the Thunderbolt. I'm really keen to look at that. But I just thought the Bantam I was really shocked at how good it was and how much I really enjoyed riding that. And I would quite merrily just not taken it back and ridden home on that. I think if it had been the yellow and silver one, I would have ridden home on it because it was such a fabulous bike. So that's my choice. Bike of the year for me is the BSA Bantam. And that wasn't a hard decision. You know, that wasn't a hard decision. Interesting, isn't it? That when you think what we thought BSA were probably, you know, might have been the end of BSA at some point, but they didn't come and bring that out. And it looks like there's other things in the pipeline. So really, really interesting, isn't it, for BSA for next year? And hopefully I still don't think the the Scrambler has probably been released yet, so I think there's delays on that. And I think that's a problem with the platform that they're using. But I hope the Bantam really does push them forward now, and we get better things from BSA. So that's me, the BSA Bantam. What was yours? You know, did you get to ride any bikes? Is it still your own bike that you're riding now? You know, that can't be beaten. You know, stick it in the comments. But that's my end of year roundup on bikes. The Bantam takes it. I'll send them a prize or something in the post, I don't know. But tell me what your favourite bike was. What was your bike of the year? And that's our year rounded out, really, isn't it? That's where we are. We're back where we started at the Roundtree. And I'm going to ride. Well, I'm going to go and get a coffee. I'm going to go off to where am I going to go? Curdford Village Stores and get a coffee and sit outside because it's still nice yet. And yeah, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for sticking with me for this year. And lots of good things to come up next year. We've got some great ideas what we're going to do. A little bit of touring again. So going to be some more touring, camping, all sorts of stuff to keep you entertained, and then visiting more subscribers like yourselves. That's on the card. So take care, have a great new year, and I will see you in 2026. Take care, everybody, look after yourselves.